I knew something was wrong the moment my grandson Noah stopped running into my arms. He just stood there, staring at me like I was someone he'd been warned about. Then my sister Linda wouldn't meet my eyes. My son Michael barely spoke, and my own daughter Emily sat across the table, calm, composed, like she had already told them a version of me I didn't recognize.
Mom, I'm so sorry.
That was the night I realized
I didn't know what
my
else
entire
to do.
family
He made
believed I
me
had
do it. I
betrayed them.
never wanted anyone to get
I didn't know
hurt.
how. I didn't know why. Until I found the recording on an old phone I almost threw away. And when I pressed play, everything I thought I knew about my daughter shattered. If you've ever felt misunderstood by the people you love most, I want you to stay with me on this one. Like this video, subscribe. If you believe truth always finds a way out, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I read every single one. I didn't notice the shift all at once. If I had, maybe I could have stopped it. Maybe I could have asked the right questions before everything hardened into something cold and permanent. But that's the thing about betrayal when it comes wrapped in silence. It creeps in quietly, disguising itself as coincidence. The first sign was Michael. My son had always called me every Sunday morning. It didn't matter how busy he was or how old he got, he always called. It was our routine. Sometimes we talked about nothing, sometimes about everything. But that Sunday came and went, and my phone stayed still. I told myself he must be busy. By Monday, I texted him. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay?" He replied hours later. Not minutes, not the way he used to. "Yeah, just a lot going on. Talk later." There was no heart emoji, no love you, just a period at the end of the sentence that felt colder than it should have. I stared at that message longer than I'd like to admit. Something wasn't right. Then there was Linda, my younger sister. We had lunch together at least twice a month, sometimes more. She was the one who knew everything about me, or at least I thought she did. When I called her that week, she didn't pick up. That wasn't unusual on its own. But what was unusual was that she didn't call back. Not that day, not the next. When I finally reached her, her voice sounded tight. "Oh, Elise, I've just been busy." Busy? That word again. "Are we still on for lunch Friday?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. There was a pause, a long one. "I don't think that's a good idea right now." I remember going completely still. "What do you mean?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I just think maybe we need some space." Space. From me. I didn't even know what I had done. I hung up the phone feeling like I had just missed something important, like everyone else had been handed a script, and I was the only one who didn't get a copy. But nothing prepared me for Noah. My grandson had always been my joy. Every time I walked through Emily's front door, he would come running, arms open, yelling, "Grandma Elise!" like I was the best part of his day. That Saturday, I brought him his favorite chocolate chip cookies. I even added extra chocolate the way he liked. When I stepped inside, he was sitting on the floor with his toy cars. "Noah," I said softly, smiling. "Look what Grandma brought you." He looked up, but he didn't smile. He didn't run to me. He just stared. There was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Confusion, hesitation, fear. He slowly stood up, clutching one of his little toy cars in his hand. Then he took a step back, a step away from me. I felt something inside my chest crack in a way I didn't know was possible. "Hey, sweetheart," I whispered. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked past me toward the kitchen. That's when I saw Emily. She was standing there watching us, not smiling, not welcoming, just watching. And for a moment, I had the strangest feeling that she wasn't surprised by Noah's reaction, that she expected it. "Mom," she said, her voice calm, too calm. "You should have called before coming." I blinked. I always come by on Saturdays." That was before she replied. Before what I looked between her and Noah, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense at all. "I just wanted to see him," I said, holding up the container of cookies like proof of something good, something harmless. Emily didn't move. "He's busy right now." Noah wasn't busy. He was standing right there staring at me like I had become someone else. I took a small step forward. He took another step back. That's when I felt it. Not confusion anymore. Rejection. Pure, quiet rejection. I lowered the container slowly. "Did I do something?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Emily crossed her arms. "Mom, this isn't the time." "For what?" I asked, my voice rising just slightly. "For you to tell me why my grandson is afraid of me." Her eyes hardened. "He's not afraid of you? Then what is it?" She didn't answer right away. And that silence said more than anything else could have. It told me there was something she wasn't saying, something she didn't want to say, or something she had already said to everyone else. "I think you should go," Emily finally said. Just like that, no explanation, no argument, just a quiet dismissal. I stood there for a moment, not moving, waiting, hoping she would soften, hoping she would look at me the way she used to. But she didn't. And neither did Noah. So I left. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than they needed to. Every red light felt longer. Every mile felt heavier. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't just people being busy. Something had changed, and whatever it was, it had spread, like a story told behind closed doors. A version of me that I hadn't been invited to defend. I walked into my house, the quiet pressing in around me. I looked at my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Nothing. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had been erased from my own family. And the worst part, I didn't even know why. But deep down, I could feel it. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. Someone had said something strong enough to turn everyone against me. And somehow, I already knew who that someone was. It took me 2 more days before someone finally said it out loud. 2 days of silence. 2 days of replaying every conversation in my head, searching for something, anything that could explain why my life had suddenly turned inside out. I was in my kitchen when Linda showed up. She didn't call first. That alone told me this wasn't going to be a normal visit. She stood at the doorway for a moment, like she wasn't sure if she should come in. Like my house, my safe place, had somehow become unfamiliar to her. "Linda," I said, drying my hands slowly on a dish towel. "What's going on?" She stepped inside, but she didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She didn't even sit down right away. Instead, she looked at me with something I had never seen in her eyes before. Judgment. "We need to talk, Elise." My stomach dropped. I nodded toward the table. "Okay." "Then sit." She sat across from me, folding her hands together, like she was preparing for something serious. Something uncomfortable. I felt my chest tighten. "Just tell me," I said quietly. "What is everyone thinking? Because I can feel it, Linda. I can feel it every time someone looks at me like I'm not me anymore." She exhaled slowly, like she had been holding this in. "Elise, Emily told us everything. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Everything. What Linda hesitated. And that hesitation, it felt like a warning. She said you've been controlling the family finances for years, Linda said carefully. That you've been keeping money that wasn't yours. I blinked. I'm sorry. What? She said you took part of the inheritance, that you never told anyone, that you've been using guilt to keep everyone dependent on you. Each word hit harder than the last. It felt like someone was reading a script about a stranger, but using my name. That's not true, I said immediately. None of that is true. Linda didn't respond right away. She showed us things, Elise. What things? My voice cracked. What could she possibly show you that makes this make sense? She said, you transferred money into your own account, Linda continued. That you made it look like expenses, that you've been doing it for years. I shook my head, my heart racing now. No, that's Linda. You know me. You know I would never. I thought I did, she interrupted softly. That hurt more than anything else. I thought I knew you, she repeated. Silence fell between us. Heavy, suffocating. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like the air had been pulled out of the room. She's lying, I said more firmly this time. Emily is lying. Linda looked down at her hands. She sounded convincing. Convincing! I let out a bitter laugh. So that's it. That's all it takes. She tells a story, and suddenly I'm the villain, Elise. No, I said, shaking my head. No, I need you to understand something. I have never taken a single dollar that didn't belong to me. Not from you, not from Michael, not from Emily. Linda didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. And that silence, that quiet doubt, it cut deeper than any accusation. Why would she say that I asked, my voice breaking now despite my effort to stay composed? Why would my own daughter make something like that up? Linda hesitated again. And I realized she had already thought about that question. She said you changed after the divorce. Linda said slowly. That you became controlling. That you needed to feel in charge. I stared at her. That's what she told you? Linda nodded. That everything I did for her, everything I gave up, that's how she sees me now. I'm just telling you what she said. And you believe her? Linda looked at me, then really looked at me. I don't know what to believe anymore. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Up until then, I had been confused, hurt, trying to fix something I didn't understand. But now I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a story that had already been told and believed, and I was the last one to hear it. When did she tell you all this? I asked quietly. A few weeks ago, Linda said. A few weeks. That meant all those strange moments, the distance, the silence. It had all started back then. She told Michael too. Linda nodded. And Robert, yes. And Jason. I asked, though I already knew the answer. Linda hesitated. Jason was there when she told us. Of course he was. A cold feeling settled in my chest. She didn't just tell you, I said slowly. She planned this. Elise. She gathered all of you. I continued, my voice steady now, even though my hands were shaking under the table. She told the same story. She made sure everyone heard it from her first. Linda didn't deny it. And that silence, that confirmation, made everything worse. because it meant this wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. She turned all of you against me, I whispered. Linda looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Do you have any idea what that feels like? I asked, my voice rising now. To walk into a room and realize every person you love has already decided who you are. Without even asking you. Elise, I'm here now after what I shot back, after the damage is already done. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I needed you to believe me, I said, my voice softer now. Even for a second, I needed one person to say, that doesn't sound like Elise. Linda looked away. I didn't know what to think. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. I can see that. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it felt different, heavier, final. I'm telling you the truth, I said quietly. Emily is lying. Linda stood up slowly. I need time, she said. Time. Another word that suddenly meant distance. She walked toward the door, then paused. I hope you're telling the truth, Elise, she said without turning around. Then she left. I sat there long after she was gone, staring at the empty chair across from me, listening to the echo of her words. I hope you're telling the truth. Not I believe you. Not I know you. Just hope. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit before. This wasn't just about clearing my name. This was about fighting a version of me that had already taken root in the minds of everyone I loved, and unless I found a way to prove the truth, I was going to lose them all. That night, after Linda left, I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there in the dim glow coming through the kitchen window, letting the silence settle around me like something heavy I couldn't shake off. The house felt different, too quiet, too still, like it was waiting for something to break. And maybe I already had. I don't know how long I sat there before I started thinking about Emily. Not the Emily from today, but the Emily I raised. The little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, pressing her face into my shoulder and whispering, "Mom, don't let anything happen to me." The teenager who cried when her first boyfriend broke her heart, who told me I was the only person she could trust. The young woman who stood in my kitchen years ago, hands shaking, telling me her marriage was falling apart and that she didn't know what to do. I had been there for all of it. Every tear, every fear, every moment she thought she couldn't make it on her own. I remembered the night she came back home after her divorce. It was late, almost midnight. I heard the knock and found her standing there with 2 suitcases and red, swollen eyes. I didn't know where else to go, she had said, and I didn't hesitate. You always have a home here, I told her. I meant it then. I meant it with everything I had. She stayed with me for nearly a year. I helped her get back on her feet. I helped her find a job again. I helped her rebuild something that looked like a future. When she met Jason, I tried to be supportive. He was charming at first, attentive, confident, the kind of man who knew exactly what to say. Maybe that's why I didn't question him the way I should have. Maybe that's where things started to change. At first, it was subtle. Emily stopped calling as often. She canceled plans last minute. When we did see each other, she seemed distracted, like her attention was always somewhere else. I told myself that was normal. She had a new relationship, a new life. But then came the comments. You don't have to worry about me so much anymore, Mom. I'm not a child. I can make my own decisions. They weren't harsh. Not at first. Just distant, like she was slowly pulling away from me one sentence at a time. And I let her. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We step back so our children can step forward. But somewhere along the way, stepping back turned into being pushed out. I remembered one conversation in particular. It was about money. Emily had asked me about the small family fund I had been managing for years, the one set aside after my parents passed. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to help in emergencies, enough to make sure no one in the family ever truly fell apart. I had always been transparent about it. Every withdrawal, every expense. At some point, Emily had said you should probably let someone else handle that. I remember laughing lightly. Like who? I don't know, she shrugged. Maybe me. There had been something in her tone that day, something I didn't recognize. Not concern, not curiosity. Something else. Expectation. I didn't think much of it at the time. I've been managing it just fine, I told her gently. But if you ever want to go through everything together, I'd be happy to show you. She didn't push. Not then. But now sitting in the dark that moment came back to me with a weight it hadn't carried before. Had that been the beginning? Had something shifted right there, and I just didn't see it? I stood up slowly and walked into the living room, my eyes falling on the framed photos along the wall. There was one of Emily on her wedding day with Jason. She looked happy, radiant. I remember how proud I felt that day. How relieved I was that she had found someone who seemed to love her. I stepped closer, studying Jason's face in the photo. Even then, there had been something about him, something I couldn't quite place. He was always polite to me, always respectful, but it felt practiced, like he knew exactly how to present himself. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. Every time Emily pulled away from me, Jason had been there. Every time she questioned me, Jason had been there. Every time she started sounding like someone I didn't recognize, Jason had been there. I felt a chill run through me. Was this really just about Emily, or was someone else guiding her, shaping what she believed? I sank down onto the couch, my thoughts racing now. If Emily had told everyone that I was controlling, manipulative, dishonest, where had that narrative come from? Because it didn't sound like the daughter I raised. But it did sound like something someone might say if they wanted to isolate me, to remove me from the picture, to make sure no one listened to me anymore. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. No, I couldn't jump to conclusions. I needed facts. I needed proof. Because right now, all I had was my word against hers. And clearly, that wasn't enough. I opened my eyes and looked around the room again. At the house I had built, at the life I had spent decades creating, at the memories that suddenly felt fragile. I'm not going to let this be the end of my story, I whispered to myself. My voice sounded stronger than I felt, but I held on to it anyway. Because if Emily had created a version of me that wasn't true, then I was going to find a way to prove it, no matter how long it took, no matter how painful it was. And deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't just about lies. There was something underneath all of this, something bigger, something hidden. And if I wanted my family back, I was going to have to uncover it. I didn't plan to go to that family dinner. In fact, I had already decided I wouldn't. After everything Linda told me, after the way Emily had looked at me in her own home, like I didn't belong there anymore, the last thing I wanted was to sit at a table surrounded by people who believed I was someone I wasn't. But then Michael called. It was late in the afternoon, and I almost didn't answer. Something in me already knew the conversation wouldn't go the way I wanted it to. Still, He was my son. Hi, Mom. His voice sounded careful, measured, not warm. Hi, I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. Everything okay? There was a pause. We're having dinner tonight at Emily's, he said. Everyone's going to be there. Everyone. The word felt heavier than it should have. I see, I said, slowly. Another pause. I think you should come. Should. Not want. Not we'd love to have you. Just should. Why? I asked quietly. He hesitated. I think it's time we talk about everything. There it was. Everything. The version of me they had all accepted without question. I closed my eyes for a moment. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect what little dignity I had left. But another part of me, the part that still believed I could fix this, knew I couldn't stay silent. I'll be there, I said. The drive to Emily's house felt longer than it ever had before. Every turn brought back memories, birthday parties, holidays, laughter spilling out of that same front door I now approached with hesitation. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something immediately. There were more cars than usual. Linda and Robert, Michael, even Jason's brother Daniel. This wasn't just dinner. This was something else, something intentional. I sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Then I took a deep breath and stepped out. If they wanted a confrontation, I wasn't going to run from it. The moment I walked in, the room went quiet, not completely silent, but close enough that I could feel it. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes turned toward me, and in those eyes, I saw it again. Judgment, suspicion, distance. Emily stood near the dining table, her arms crossed lightly in front of her. Jason was beside her, one hand resting casually on the back of her chair, like he belonged there more than I did. Michael was already seated. Linda sat next to him. No one smiled. No one said, "It's good to see you." No one stood up to greet me. I had never felt so out of place in a room full of people I loved. "Hi," I said softly. A few murmured responses came back, but they felt forced. Hollow. I took a seat at the end of the table. Not my usual seat. That one had been taken. Another small detail that shouldn't have mattered, but did. Dinner started quietly. Too quietly. The clinking of silverware against plates filled the spaces where conversation used to be. I looked around the table, searching for something, anything familiar. But all I saw were people avoiding my eyes. Until Emily spoke. So she said, setting her fork down gently, "Are we just going to pretend nothing's happened?" There it was. The moment I had been dreading. I set my own fork down, my hands steady despite the storm building inside me. "I think that depends," I said calmly, "on what you think has happened." Emily let out a small, almost amused breath. "That's exactly what I mean." I met her gaze. "Then say it," I said. "Say what you've been telling everyone." The room went still again. Jason shifted slightly beside her, but didn't interrupt. Emily leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You've been manipulating the family for years, Mom," she said, her voice clear, controlled. "You've been handling money that wasn't yours, and you've been lying about it." Hearing it out loud, hearing her say it directly to my face, it hit differently than when Linda told me. Because this time, there was no doubt, no hesitation, just certainty. "That's not true," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Not this time." Emily tilted her head slightly. "Then explain the transfers." "What transfers?" I asked. "The money that went into your account," she said. "The withdrawals that don't match any documented expenses." I stared at her. I have records of everything I said, every single transaction. Do you? She replied, raising an eyebrow. Something about the way she said it? Like she already knew something I didn't. I've always been transparent, I continued. Anyone could have asked me at any time? But we didn't know we needed to ask, she interrupted. A murmur of agreement moved around the table. That sound, that quiet confirmation from everyone else, it felt like a door closing. You didn't need to ask because there was nothing to hide. I said, my voice stronger now. Emily shook her head slowly. That's not how it looks. How it looks, I repeated. Or how you've made it look. Her expression hardened. I'm telling the truth. No, I said, leaning forward slightly. You're telling a story. Silence again. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Jason finally spoke. Emily didn't come to this lightly, he said. She's been struggling with this for a while. I turned to him. And you encouraged her to say something. It wasn't a question. He didn't deny it. She deserves honesty, he said. And I don't. I shot back. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. I looked around the table, at Michael, at Linda, at people who had known me my entire life. Not one of you came to me, I said quietly. Not one of you asked me if any of this was true. No one answered. Instead, you all sat here and listened. I continued. You listened to a story about me, and you believed it. Elise Linda started. No, I said, raising a hand slightly. I need to say this. My heart was pounding now, but I didn't stop. I have given everything to this family, I said. Everything. And the first time someone questions me, you don't defend me. You don't ask questions. You just accept it. I looked directly at Emily. And you, I said, my voice lower now. You didn't just question me. You turned everyone against me. Her eyes flashed. I told them the truth. Then prove it, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. And the moment they did, something shifted in the room. Emily's expression flickered just for a second. Then it was gone. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, if you're going to accuse me of something like this, I said, then show them. Show them proof. She hesitated. Just long enough for me to notice. Jason glanced at her. A quick look, but it was enough. Enough to plant a seed. Because for the first time since this all started, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not certainty, not confidence, but hesitation. And in that hesitation, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. A crack. A small one, but real. And for the first time, I realized this story she had built might not be as solid as she wanted everyone to believe. That moment when I asked her to prove it lingered in the air long after the words left my mouth. I could feel it. Something had shifted. Not enough for anyone to suddenly believe me. Not enough to undo the damage already done. But enough to make the room uncertain. Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for her glass of water, taking a slow sip, like she was buying time. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Because the Emily I raised, she was never slow to defend what she believed was right. Mom, she said, finally setting the glass down. This isn't about putting on a show. A show, I repeated. You're the one who made this public. That's because it needed to be said. No, I said, quietly. It needed to be true. Jason shifted beside her again. You're twisting this, he said. I turned to him. Am I? I asked. Then help me understand. because right now all I see is an accusation with no proof. There is proof, Emily snapped. Then show it, I said, not raising my voice. Right now. The room held its breath. Michael looked between us. Linda's fingers tightened around her napkin. Even Robert leaned forward slightly like he was waiting. Emily's jaw clenched. It's not that simple. I almost laughed. Of course it wasn't, because if it had been, she would have done it already. What's not simple about it? I asked. You said I took money. You said I manipulated records. Those are serious accusations, Emily, so show them. I don't need to justify myself to you, she said. No, I replied. But you do need to justify yourself to them. I gestured lightly around the table. Because you didn't just come to me. You came to everyone. That hit something. I saw it in her eyes. A flicker. Quick, but real. Jason placed a hand gently on her arm. Maybe we should do this another time, he said calmly. When everyone's not so emotional. Emotional. That word again. As if this was just about feelings and not facts. No, I said firmly. This has already gone too far for that. I reached into my purse, slowly pulling out my phone. If this is about money, I continued, then we can start there. I have records. Every transaction. Every withdrawal. Every deposit. Right here. I placed the phone on the table. A quiet, solid sound. I've never hidden anything I said. Emily didn't move. Then why are there discrepancies? She asked. I frowned. What discrepancies? She hesitated again. There are transactions that don't line up, she said. Amounts that don't match what you've reported. That's not possible, I said immediately. It is, she insisted. Then be specific, I replied. Give me one example. Silence. Not a long one, but long enough. Jason spoke before she could. We're not here to argue details, he said. The point is, there's been a pattern of what I asked sharply. Taking care of this family, making sure no one went without. That's not what this is about, Emily said. Then what is it about? I asked, my voice rising despite myself. Because now I was starting to see it. Not just the cracks in her story, but the emptiness behind it. She had accusations. She had emotion. But she didn't have substance. And that terrified her. Because the moment she had to explain it, the moment she had to prove it, everything started to fall apart. You always had control, she said finally. You decided who got help, when they got it, how much they got. Yes, I said, because someone had to manage it responsibly. You decided everything I managed what your grandparents left behind? I shot back. For all of us. The room felt tighter now. The tension no longer quiet. Now it was alive. And you never thought to let anyone else handle it, she pressed. I offered, I said. Multiple times. You never wanted to. That's not true. It is, I said firmly. You asked once, years ago. I told you we could go through everything together. You didn't follow up. She didn't respond. Because she couldn't. I remembered that moment clearly. Too clearly. And now it was starting to make sense. Not fully, but enough. This wasn't about missing money. This wasn't about hidden transactions. This was about control, about perception, about rewriting the story in a way that made me look like the problem. And suddenly, one detail from earlier came rushing back. Something she had said. There are transactions that don't line up, but she hadn't named a single one. Not one date, not one amount, nothing concrete, just a claim. I leaned back slightly, studying her now. "Emily," I said, quieter this time. She looked at me. "For something this serious, you should know exactly what you're talking about." Her eyes flickered again, just like before, and this time, I was sure of it. She didn't. Not really. She had been told something, or she had convinced herself of something, but she didn't have the details, and that meant there was something else behind all of this, something she wasn't saying, or something she didn't even fully understand herself. "I think we should end this for tonight," Jason said again, his tone firmer now. Of course he did, because now the questions were turning in the wrong direction. "No," I said, and this time, my voice didn't waver at all. "Not yet." I looked directly at Emily. "Because the more you talk," I said slowly, "the less this makes sense." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't the only one feeling it. They all were. Michael shifted in his seat. Linda looked between us, uncertainty clear on her face. Even Robert frowned slightly, like something wasn't adding up. "And Emily looked at Jason, just for a second, but it was enough. Because in that glance, I saw it. Not confidence, not certainty, but doubt. And that was all I needed, because doubt was the beginning of the truth finding its way back in. That look Emily gave Jason stayed with me long after dinner ended. It wasn't just a glance. It was a check. A silent question. And whatever answer she found in his eyes, it mattered more to her than anything I said. That realization followed me home like a shadow I couldn't shake, because now I knew something I hadn't fully accepted before. This wasn't just about Emily. There was something else influencing her, something or someone feeding the narrative she had built around me. And if I wanted the truth, I needed to stop reacting. I needed to start thinking. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. For the first time in days, I didn't feel frozen. I felt focused. There was only one place to start: the finances. If Emily's entire story was built on money, on alleged discrepancies, then that's where the truth would either collapse or reveal something I hadn't seen. I walked into my home office and pulled out the old filing boxes. Every document I had ever kept was there. Bank statements, receipts, records going back years. I had always been meticulous, not because I expected to be accused one day, but because that's who I was. Careful, responsible, transparent. I sat down and began going through everything. At first, it felt almost pointless. I already knew what I would find: order, consistency, nothing hidden. But then I forced myself to look at it differently. Not as me, but as someone trying to find fault, trying to build a case. What would they look for? What would they twist? I started with the inheritance fund. Every deposit was logged, every withdrawal documented. Emergency expenses for Michael when he lost his job years ago. Medical support for Linda after her surgery. Even small amounts I had given Emily during her divorce things I never expected back. Everything was there. Clear. Explainable. Honest. So where were these discrepancies she claimed existed? I flipped through another set of statements, then another. Hours passed. The sun shifted across the room. Still nothing. No missing amounts, no unexplained transfers, no hidden accounts. Nothing. And yet, Emily had sounded so certain. too certain, which meant one of two things. Either she had convinced herself of something that wasn't true, or someone had convinced her. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing, and then something clicked. Not a full answer, but a direction. What if Emily wasn't lying about seeing something? What if she had seen something, but misunderstood it? Or worse, what if she had been shown something intentionally misleading? I sat up straighter, because that would change everything. That would mean this wasn't just a lie. It was manipulation. And if that was true, then the question became, who would benefit from turning Emily against me? My thoughts went straight to Jason. Not out of anger, not out of assumption, but because of patterns. Because every shift in Emily's behavior, every moment she pulled away, every doubt she expressed about me, Jason had been there. And now, thinking back to the dinner, the way he tried to end the conversation when things started to unravel, the way he spoke for her, the way she looked at him before answering, it all pointed in one direction. I stood up and started pacing the room. If Jason was involved, then this wasn't just about perception. It was about motive. What did he want? Money control distance between Emily and me? I stopped walking. Because suddenly, another memory surfaced. Something small. Something I hadn't thought about in years. The account access. There had been a time, brief but real, when Emily had access to part of the family fund. Not full control, but enough to view transactions. Enough to understand how it worked. It had been during her divorce, when she was living with me. I had trusted her. Of course I had. She was my daughter. But after she moved out, I had removed that access. Not out of suspicion, just out of practicality. The account was my responsibility again. At least, that's what I believed. A cold feeling crept into my chest. What if that access hadn't been fully removed? Or worse, what if someone else had gained access after that? I rushed back to my desk, pulling up my bank account online. My hands moved faster now, my heart beating harder with every click. I checked permissions, access logs, recent activity. At first, everything looked normal. Then I saw it, a login. Not from my device, not from my location. 3 weeks ago, I froze. Because 3 weeks ago, that's when everything started to change. That's when Emily told everyone her story. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath shallow. Another login, a few days later. Same unfamiliar device, same pattern. My pulse quickened. Someone had accessed the account. Someone who wasn't me. And suddenly, everything made sense in a way that made my stomach turn. If someone had gone into the account, if they had looked at transactions without context, if they had taken pieces of information and twisted them, they could create a story, a convincing one, a dangerous one. I sat back slowly, the weight of it all settling in. Emily didn't need to invent everything. She just needed to believe it. And if someone had shown her selective information, if someone had guided her interpretation, then she wouldn't feel like she was lying. She would feel like she was exposing the truth. My eyes drifted back to the login records. 3 weeks ago, right before everything fell apart. I whispered to myself, barely audible. This wasn't an accident, because now I knew. This wasn't just about misunderstanding. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or broken trust. Someone had interfered. Someone had planted doubt. And someone had made sure it grew into something strong enough to destroy everything I had built. And the most terrifying part, Emily might not even realize she was part of it. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself. Then I opened them again. Because now I wasn't just defending myself. I was uncovering something deliberate, something calculated. And if I followed it far enough, I had a feeling it would lead me straight to the truth. Once I saw those login records, I couldn't unsee them. They sat there on my screen like quiet witnesses, pointing to something I hadn't been allowed to consider before. Someone had been inside my account. Not just once, more than once, and always around the same time. The same time Emily's story began. I printed everything, every login record, every timestamp, every detail I could find. Then I went back to the statements again, but this time I wasn't looking for mistakes. I was looking for what someone else might have seen, or more importantly, what they might have chosen to show. I forced myself to look at it the way Emily might have, not with full context, not with years of understanding, just pieces, fragments. I found one, a transfer I had made almost 2 years ago, a large one. At first glance, it didn't look good. Money moved from the family fund into my personal account. No immediate explanation attached to the statement. If someone saw that without context, they could misunderstand it or twist it, but I knew exactly what it was. That was the year Michael lost his job. He didn't want anyone to know how bad things were, not even Linda. He came to me late one night, sitting exactly where I had been sitting just days ago. "Mom," he said, his voice low, ashamed. "I don't know how I'm going to cover the mortgage this month." I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money into my account first, then wrote him a check. Quietly, privately, because I knew how much his pride meant to him, and I didn't want anyone else to see it as him taking from the family fund. So I carried that burden myself. I documented it. Of course I did, but not on the bank statement. The explanation was in my personal records, in the files, the ones only I had. I leaned back in my chair slowly. If someone saw that transaction alone, without the explanation, without the context, it could look like I took the money. My chest tightened, because now I understood. Not everything, but enough. If someone had gone through my account, if they had selected certain transactions and presented them without context, they could build a convincing case, a dangerous one, and Emily would believe it, because she wasn't looking for the truth. She was looking for an explanation, and someone had handed her one. I stood up again, my heart pounding now. There was one more thing I needed to check. The old phone. I hadn't thought about it in years. It was sitting in a drawer in the hallway, charged occasionally, mostly forgotten. But suddenly, it didn't feel unimportant anymore, because that phone had been around during the time Emily stayed with me, during the time she had access to everything. I pulled the drawer open and found it exactly where I left it. Dusty, silent, but not useless. I turned it on. The screen flickered to life slowly, like it was waking up from a long sleep. Messages loaded. Old notifications appeared. And then, something caught my eye. A recording app. I frowned. I didn't remember using that. Not recently. Curious, I tapped it open. There were only a few files. Short ones, mostly accidental recordings, but one stood out. Longer than the others. Dated 3 weeks ago. My breath caught. 3 weeks ago. The same time everything began. My hand hovered over the screen. I didn't press play. Not yet. Because suddenly, everything inside me felt still. Like I was standing on the edge of something. Something that could change everything. I sat down slowly, the phone in my hand. My heart was beating so loud, I could hear it. If this was what I thought it was, if this recording had anything to do with what was happening, then this wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was proof waiting to be uncovered. But I hesitated because a part of me, a small, fragile part, still hoped I was wrong, still hoped there was some explanation that didn't involve betrayal this deep. But another part of me, the part that had seen the login records, the part that had seen Emily hesitate, the part that had felt the ground shift under everything I believed in, that part knew. This wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't going to be easy. And whatever was in that recording, it was going to hurt. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself. Then I opened them again, because I didn't have the luxury of avoiding the truth anymore. Not when everything I cared about was already slipping away. My thumb moved slowly toward the screen. I took a breath. And then I pressed play. At first, all I could hear was static. A faint hum, like the phone had been left somewhere without anyone realizing it was recording. I almost thought it was nothing, an accidental file, something meaningless. But then, voices. Faint at first, then clearer, and the moment I recognized them, my entire body went still. Emily and Jason. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. I'm telling you, this is the only way, Jason's voice said, low but firm. Emily sounded different than I had ever heard her before. Not confident, not controlled, uncertain. I don't know. This feels wrong, she said. My chest tightened. Because that sounded like my daughter, the one I knew, the one I raised. You said you needed a solution, Jason replied. This is a solution. At her expense, Emily whispered. There was a pause, a long one. Then Jason spoke again. No one is going to question it if you present it the right way. I felt something cold settle deep inside me, because now I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was strategy. I don't want to hurt her, Emily said softly. Jason sighed. You're not hurting her, he said. You're protecting yourself by lying. That word hung in the air, clear, undeniable. Jason didn't respond immediately, and in that silence, I felt my heart crack. She's been controlling everything for years, he continued. All the money, all the decisions. You've told me that yourself. That's not the same thing Emily said. It is when it affects you, he insisted. You're struggling, Emily. We're struggling, and she's sitting on money that could help us. My grip on the phone tightened. There it was, the motive. Not confusion, not concern, need, desperation, and something darker. She helped me before Emily said quietly. When I needed it, and she made you feel small for it, Jason countered quickly. Don't pretend she didn't. That's not true. Then why didn't she give you control when you asked? I closed my eyes, because I knew exactly what moment he was referring to. That conversation. Years ago. Twisted, reframed, used. I didn't push, Emily said. I dropped it. Exactly, Jason said. Because she made you feel like you couldn't question her. That's not Emily, he interrupted, his voice sharper now. Listen to me. We need this. You said it yourself. We're running out of options. Silence. Heavy. Painful. I don't want to lie, Emily said again, but weaker this time. You don't have to lie, Jason replied smoothly. You just have to tell the truth, from your perspective. I felt a bitter taste rise in my throat. From your perspective. That's how it started. That's how it grew. That's how it spread. She moved money into her own account. Right? Jason continued. Yes, but then say that. It wasn't for her, Emily said. I think it was for Michael at the time. You think Jason cut in? You're not sure. Another pause. And if you're not sure, he continued, then how can anyone else be sure I opened my eyes staring at nothing? Because I could see it now. Step by step. How he dismantled certainty. How he planted doubt. How he reshaped reality. Just enough to make it believable. I don't like this, Emily whispered. I know, Jason edited softly, his tone changing now. Gentler, persuasive. But sometimes you have to do hard things to protect your future. Protect your future. Another justification, another layer. And once people see it, he added, they'll understand. They'll see what you've been dealing with. That's not fair to her. What's not fair? Jason said, his voice tightening again, is you struggling while she holds all the control. Silence again, longer this time, and then Emily spoke, quieter than before. I don't want to lose my family. My heart shattered, because in that moment, she didn't realize what she was about to do. You won't, Jason said immediately. They'll be on your side. How do you know? Because people believe what they hear first, he said. And once they see the evidence, they won't question it. Evidence. That word again. Twisted, manipulated. Just show them the transactions, he continued. Don't over-explain. Let them draw their own conclusions. But what if she tries to explain? Jason let out a quiet breath. Then it'll just look like she's making excuses. I felt something inside me break completely. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Because now there was no doubt, no confusion, no gray area. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned, guided, engineered. She's your mother, Emily said softly one last time. And Jason's response, it was the thing that stayed with me the most. Then she should have made better choices. The recording ended shortly after that. Just static again. Just silence. But I didn't move. I couldn't. The phone felt heavy in my hands, heavier than anything I had ever held before. Because it wasn't just a recording, it was the truth. Raw, ugly, unfiltered. My daughter hadn't woken up one day and decided to destroy me. She had been led there, step by step, doubt by doubt, justification by justification. And by the time she spoke, she believed it. I let out a slow breath, my chest tight. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Because now everything had changed. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't defending myself against shadows. I had proof. Real proof. Not assumptions. Not arguments. Truth. And with that truth, I had a choice. I could protect Emily, keep this to myself, pretend none of this existed, or I could finally clear my name, even if it meant exposing the one person who had manipulated everything. I looked down at the phone again, my reflection faintly visible on the dark screen. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. Cold. Painful. But clear. Because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. And I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. The recording played over and over in my mind, like something I couldn't turn off, each word carving itself deeper into me. This is the only way. No one will question it. People believe what they hear first. And the one that hurt the most, she's your mother. Then she should have made better choices. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, the phone still in front of me, the screen dark now, but no less heavy. I had spent days trying to understand why my daughter would betray me. Now I understood something worse. She hadn't started this, but she had chosen to continue it. And Jason had guided every step, carefully, deliberately. I pressed my palms flat against the table, grounding myself, because now came the part that mattered most. What I was going to do with the truth. I could already imagine it. Walking into another family gathering, playing the recording, watching everything fall apart, watching faces shift, watching the doubt move from me to them. It would be justice, clear, immediate, undeniable. But it wouldn't be clean, because exposing Jason meant exposing Emily too. Her hesitation, her doubt, her choice to go along with it anyway. And no matter how much she had been influenced, she had still said the words. She had still told the story. She had still let them believe it. I closed my eyes, my chest tight. This wasn't just about proving I was right. This was about deciding what kind of ending I wanted. Not for the story, but for my family. Morning came quietly, too quietly. I made coffee but didn't drink it. I got dressed but didn't notice what I was wearing. My mind kept circling the same question. Do I expose everything, or do I protect what's left? By noon, my phone rang. Emily. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Hello. Her voice was softer than it had been in days. Mom, can we talk? I didn't respond right away. Because now I heard something in her voice I hadn't heard before. Not confidence, not accusation, uncertainty. About what I asked calmly. There was a pause. About everything. I leaned back in my chair. Come over, I said. She arrived 30 minutes later. Alone. That was the first thing I noticed. No Jason, no shield, no influence standing beside her. Just my daughter. She stood at the doorway for a moment, like she didn't know if she was welcome. I stepped aside. Come in. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the room like it had changed. Maybe it had. Maybe I had. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where everything had started to unravel. I've been thinking, she said, her hands folded tightly in front of her. So have I replied. Another pause. I didn't expect things to go this far, she admitted. I studied her carefully. What did you expect? I asked. She hesitated. I thought people would just understand. Understand that things weren't right, she said. That something needed to change. I let that sit for a moment. And lying was the way to do that, I asked quietly. Her eyes dropped. I didn't think of it as lying. Of course she didn't. Not fully. Not anymore. Then what did you think it was? I pressed. She struggled with that. I thought I was telling the truth as I saw it. I nodded slowly. And now? She looked up at me, and for the first time since this began, I saw it clearly. Doubt. I don't know anymore, she said. That was honest, painfully honest. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw the little girl again. The one who used to come to me when she didn't understand something. The one who trusted me to help her make sense of the world. What changed? I asked gently. Her eyes filled with tears. I felt like I was losing control, she admitted. Everything was falling apart. The house. The bills. Jason kept saying we needed to figure something out. There it was. Not justification. Not defense. Just truth. He said you had more than you were letting on, she continued. That you were holding things back. And you believed him. I didn't, at first, she said quickly. But then he showed me things. My heart tightened. What things? Transactions, she said. Money moving in ways that didn't make sense. I nodded slowly. Without context, I said. She hesitated. I guess. Yeah. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed records, the login activity, the timestamps. I slid them across the table. Her eyes moved over the pages, slowly, carefully. What is this? She asked. Someone accessed the account, I said. 3 weeks ago. Her head snapped up. What? From a device that wasn't mine? I continued. Right before everything started? Her face drained of color. That's not possible. Isn't it? I asked. She looked back down at the pages, her hands trembling now. I didn't do this, she whispered. I know, I said. That surprised her. She looked up at me again. You know, I held her gaze. Because I know exactly who did. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jason, she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because the truth had already reached her, and I could see it happening in real time, the pieces connecting, the doubt growing, the realization forming. No, she said, shaking her head slowly. No, he wouldn't. But her voice didn't sound certain anymore. Not like before. Not like at the dinner table. Because now she wasn't hearing his version of events. She was seeing the cracks. And for the first time, she was standing in the middle of them. No. Emily whispered again, but this time it sounded different. Not defensive, not certain. It sounded like someone trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. Her hands tightened around the papers, her eyes scanning the login records again and again, like if she looked long enough they might change. He wouldn't do that, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't push, because I knew this moment didn't belong to me. It belonged to her, to the truth finally catching up. Jason wouldn't... She started, then stopped. Then she looked up at me. Did you... Did you check everything she asked? Yes, I said simply. She swallowed. And you're sure these logins aren't yours? I'm sure. Silence filled the space between us, heavy, unavoidable. And then I reached for my phone. Her eyes followed the movement immediately. What is it? She asked, her voice tight. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I unlocked the screen and set it gently on the table between us. There's something you need to hear, I said. Her expression shifted. Fear. Real fear. What do you mean? I met her gaze. Just listen. My finger hovered over the screen for a moment, just like it had the night before. But this time, there was no hesitation. I pressed play. At first, she didn't react, just listened, her face still, her posture rigid. Then Jason's voice came through. Clear, undeniable. I'm telling you, this is the only way. Emily froze. I watched it happen. The exact moment her body recognized something her mind wasn't ready to accept. Her breathing changed. Slower. Shallower. That's... She whispered, her eyes widening. That's not... She stopped. Because it was. She knew it. I didn't say a word. I just let the recording play. Her own voice filled the room next. Soft. Uncertain. I don't know. This feels wrong. Tears welled in her eyes immediately. Because she remembered. Not just the conversation, but how she had felt in that moment. Conflicted. Unsure. Still capable of choosing differently. I could see it all over her face. Jason's voice followed. Calm. Controlled. No one is going to question it if you present it the right way. Emily shook her head slowly, her lips parting slightly. No, she whispered again. But the recording didn't stop. It continued. Every word, every manipulation, every carefully placed suggestion, every doubt he planted. And every time she tried to push back, he redirected her, guided her, shaped her thinking. By the time it reached the part people believe what they hear first, Emily broke. Her hand flew to her mouth, a sob escaping before she could stop it. She looked at me, her eyes wide with horror. I didn't, she choked out. I didn't realize. I didn't respond. Because the recording wasn't done. And she needed to hear all of it. She needed to hear the part where she asked, "But what if she tries to explain?" And his answer, "Then it'll just look like she's making excuses." Her entire body shook at that, because now she understood everything she had said at that dinner. Every time she had dismissed me, every time she had cut me off. She hadn't been reacting. She had been following a script, and she didn't even know it. When the final words played, "She's your mother," then she should have made better choices. Emily let out a broken sound I will never forget. Not anger, not denial, but grief. Deep, overwhelming. The recording ended. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it was different. Because the truth was no longer hidden. It was sitting right there between us. Raw, unavoidable. Emily didn't look at me right away. She stared at the table, her shoulders shaking, as quiet sobs escaped her. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, Mom. I didn't know." I believed her. That was the hardest part. Because hearing that recording, I could see it clearly. She hadn't started this, but she had allowed it to continue. I thought, she struggled to say, wiping her tears with trembling hands. I thought I was protecting myself, protecting my family. You were, I said softly. She looked up at me confused. Just not from the right thing. That hit her. I saw it, the realization settling deeper. Not just what Jason had done, but what she had done because of it. I told everyone, she whispered. I made them believe. Her voice broke again. I turned them against you. I didn't respond right away, because there was nothing to say that could soften that truth, and she needed to face it fully. I don't know how to fix this, she said, her voice small now. I don't know how to undo what I did. I leaned back slightly, studying her. This was the moment, the one that would define everything that came next. Not just for her, but for me too. You can't undo it, I said gently. Her face fell. But you can tell the truth, I continued. She nodded slowly, tears still streaming down her face. Yes, I can do that. And you have to, I said. Not harsh, not angry, just certain. She wiped her eyes again, taking a shaky breath. They're not going to believe me, she said. They believed you before I replied. They'll listen again. Her expression tightened. And Jason, I held her gaze. That's something you need to decide. She looked down at her hands again. Because now the truth wasn't just about me. It was about her marriage, her choices, her future. I don't know who he is anymore, she admitted quietly. I nodded. Then maybe it's time to find out. Silence settled again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It felt like something else, the beginning of something difficult, but necessary, because the truth had finally come to light, and now, there was no going back. Telling the truth sounded simple, in theory, in words. But in reality, it meant walking into a room full of people who had already judged me and asking them to admit they were wrong. It meant forcing Emily to stand in front of them and undo everything she had said. And it meant exposing Jason. Not just as someone who made a mistake, but as someone who had deliberately manipulated a situation for his own benefit. 2 days later, we called the family together again. This time, it was at my house. That mattered, because I needed to be on my ground, not walking into theirs. When they arrived, I saw it immediately. The tension, the hesitation, the curiosity. Michael stood near the doorway, his arms crossed. Linda stayed close to Robert, whispering something under her breath. And Jason? Jason walked in last. Calm, composed, like nothing had changed, like everything was still under control. But when his eyes met mine, something flickered. Just for a second. Recognition. Not of guilt, but of risk. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Thank you for coming, I said, keeping my voice steady. No one replied right away. They took their seats slowly, like they weren't sure what this was going to become. Emily stood beside me, not sitting, not hiding. That alone told me she had made her choice. We're here because something needs to be corrected, I said. Michael frowned slightly. What do you mean? I glanced at Emily. She took a breath and stepped forward. I lied, she said. The words landed like a shockwave. No one spoke. No one moved. I didn't tell you the full truth, she continued, her voice trembling but clear. About Mom, about the money, about everything. Linda blinked, her expression tightening. Emily, what are you saying? I'm saying I was wrong, she said. I made assumptions. I believed things without understanding them. Jason shifted slightly in his seat. Subtle, but noticeable. "That's not what happened," he said calmly. "You were confused, maybe, but you weren't wrong to question things." Emily didn't look at him. "Not this time." "No," she said quietly. "I was wrong." The room felt different now, unsteady, like the foundation had shifted and no one knew where to stand. "What changed?" Michael asked. Emily swallowed. Then she looked at me, and I nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "There's something you need to hear," she said. Jason's posture stiffened immediately. "What is this?" he asked. Emily didn't answer. She just pressed play. The recording filled the room, and this time, I didn't watch the phone. I watched them. Michael's brow furrowed as he recognized Jason's voice. Linda's hand flew to her mouth when she heard Emily's hesitation. Robert leaned forward, his expression sharpening with every word. And Jason didn't move. Not at first. He sat there still, listening, waiting, calculating. But as the recording continued, as his own words came through clear, undeniable, impossible to twist, I saw it. The shift. Not panic, not fear, but something colder. Awareness. He knew the game had changed. When it reached the part people believe what they hear first, Michael sat back slowly, and when it ended, silence. Complete. Heavy. No one spoke, until Linda finally whispered, "Oh my God." Michael looked at Emily, then at me, then back at Jason. "Is this real?" he asked. Emily nodded, tears already streaming down her face. "Yes." Michael's jaw tightened. He turned to Jason. "You said this, Jason didn't answer right away." "Of course he didn't, because there was no easy way out." No one forced her to say anything he said finally. It was subtle, but I heard it. He didn't deny it. He redirected. She made her own choices. He continued. "I just gave her perspective." "Perspective," Linda repeated, her voice rising. "You told her to twist things. I told her to protect herself," Jason snapped, from what Michael shot back. "From our mother," Jason stood up slowly. "From a situation where she had no control," he said. "Where everything was decided for her." "That's not true," Emily said, her voice breaking. "You made me believe that." Jason turned to her. "I helped you see it clearly." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You made me doubt everything. You made me question her. You made me believe things that weren't real." Jason's expression hardened. "I didn't make you do anything." "But you knew," I said quietly. That stopped him. He looked at me, really looked at me. "You knew the context of those transactions," I continued, "or at least enough to know they weren't what you were implying." He didn't respond. "And you chose not to correct it," I added. Still nothing. Because he couldn't, not without admitting everything. Michael stood up now. "So all of this," he said, gesturing around the room, "everything that's happened, was based on this." "Yes," Emily whispered. Linda looked at me. Her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in days. "Regret, Elise?" I raised a hand gently. "Not yet," I said, because apologies weren't what mattered right now. Truth was. Jason grabbed his jacket. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're all overreacting." "No," Michael said firmly. "We're finally reacting to the truth." Jason scoffed. Then he looked at Emily one last time. "You're making a mistake." Emily didn't move, didn't speak, didn't follow him, and that told me everything. Jason walked out. The door closed behind him, and for the first time since this began, the room felt quiet in a different way. Not tense, not uncertain, just still. Because the truth had finally been spoken. Out loud, where everyone could hear it, where no one could ignore it. And now came the part no one ever talks about. What happens after the truth? The silence after Jason left didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. No one rushed to speak. No one knew what to say. Because what had just happened wasn't just about proving me right. It was about realizing how wrong they had been. Michael was the first to move. He sat back down slowly, rubbing his face with both hands like he was trying to process everything at once. "I should have come to you," he said finally, his voice low, heavy with regret. I looked at him. My son. The one who had always trusted me. Until he didn't. "Yes," I said quietly. Not harsh, not forgiving, just honest. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't know why I didn't," he admitted. I heard it, and it made sense at the time. And once it did, I stopped questioning it. That was the truth. Not just his, all of theirs. Linda wiped her eyes, her voice shaking when she spoke. "I feel so ashamed, Elise," she said. "I looked at you differently. I doubted you. After everything we've been through." Her words trailed off, because there was nothing she could add that would undo what had already been done. "I thought I knew you," she whispered. I let out a slow breath. "That's what hurt the most," I said. Not the accusation, not even the lies, but how quickly everyone believed them. The room went quiet again, because they couldn't argue with that. Robert cleared his throat. "We didn't want to believe it," he said carefully. But it was presented in a way that made it hard to ignore. I nodded. "I know." And I did. That was the hardest part. Because the story had been believable, carefully constructed, just enough truth, wrapped in distortion. That's what made it dangerous. Emily sat silently beside me, her eyes red, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She hadn't said anything since Jason left, but she didn't need to. Everything she needed to say had already been said. Michael turned toward her. "Are you okay?" he asked. She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I'm not." No one pushed her. No one questioned it. Because now they understood. This wasn't just about being wrong. It was about living with what she had done because of it. "I need to fix this," she said, suddenly looking up. Her voice wasn't steady, but it was certain. "I need to fix what I broke." Linda reached out, placing a hand over hers. "You've already started," she said gently. Emily shook her head again. "No, telling the truth isn't fixing it. It's just stopping the damage from getting worse." She looked at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Not just regret. Responsibility. "I hurt you," she said. The words were simple, but they landed deeper than anything else. Because they were real. "I let someone turn me against you," she continued. "But I still made the choice to believe it, to repeat it, to make everyone else believe it too." I held her gaze, because this part mattered. Not the apology, but the ownership. I don't expect you to forgive me, she added quickly. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I needed to say that. The room stayed still, waiting, watching, for my response, and I realized something in that moment. This wasn't about saying the right thing. It was about being honest, just like I had asked them to be. You didn't just hurt me, I said slowly. You broke something. Her face crumpled slightly. I know, and it's not something that gets fixed overnight, I continued. I know, she repeated, but I added, my voice softening just a little. You showed up today. You told the truth, even when it cost you something. She blinked, surprised. And that matters, I said. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were different. Not just grief, but relief. A small one, fragile, but real. Michael stood up and walked toward me. I'm sorry, he said. Not complicated, not defensive, just sincere. I looked at him for a moment. Then I nodded. I believe you. That seemed to mean more than forgiveness, because forgiveness wasn't something I could offer yet, not fully. But belief, that was a beginning. Linda followed, then Robert. One by one they acknowledged it, not perfectly, not with the right words, but with honesty. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something shift inside me. Not completely, not enough to erase the pain, but enough to remind me of something important. They had been wrong, but they weren't beyond repair. The room felt different now, still heavy, still complicated, but no longer divided, just uncertain. And then there was Emily. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken again, but I could feel it. She was waiting, not for forgiveness, but for direction. What do you want to do next? She asked quietly. That question, it wasn't about Jason. It wasn't about the past. It was about what came after. And for the first time, I allowed myself to think about that, not as someone defending herself, not as someone reacting, but as someone choosing. Choosing what kind of future I wanted and what kind of boundaries it would have, because the truth had come out. But healing, that was something entirely different. After that day, nothing went back to the way it was. And maybe that was the hardest truth of all. Not the lies, not the betrayal, but the realization that once something breaks at that level, it doesn't simply return to its original shape. It changes. And you have to decide what you're willing to rebuild and what you're not. The house felt different after everyone left. Quieter, but not in the heavy, suffocating way it had before. This time, the silence felt honest. Emily stayed behind. She didn't ask if she could. She didn't need to. I knew she wasn't ready to leave, not yet. We sat in the living room across from each other, the same distance between us, but somehow, not the same. I don't know where to start, she said after a long pause. That's because you're trying to fix everything at once, I replied. She let out a shaky breath. Yeah, that sounds like me. I almost smiled. Almost. Start with what you can control, I said. And what's that? She asked quietly. Your choices, I answered, from here forward. She nodded slowly. That made sense to her. I could see it, because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't reacting. She was thinking. What are you going to do about Jason? I asked. Her eyes dropped. I don't know, she admitted. I keep replaying everything he said, everything he did, and I don't even recognize it anymore. That's because you were seeing him through trust, I said. Now you're seeing him through truth. She swallowed. That's a lot harder. Yes, I said. It is. Another long silence passed between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt necessary, like something was settling into place. I thought he was helping me, she said finally. When things started falling apart, when we were struggling, he always had an answer. I nodded. That's what made it easy to believe him. She looked up at me, her eyes searching. Do you think he planned all of it? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know. Not completely, but I knew enough. I think he saw an opportunity, I said carefully, and he took it. Her expression tightened, and I helped him. I didn't argue with that, because she needed to say it, to own it. I don't know if I can stay with him, she whispered. That was the first time she had said it out loud, and I could hear the weight of it. This wasn't just about a mistake. This was about her life, her marriage, her future. You don't have to decide that today, I said gently. She looked relieved. But you do have to be honest with yourself, I added. She nodded. I know. Her voice was stronger now, still fragile, but stronger. And with him, I continued. That part was harder. I could see it in her face, because honesty with Jason meant confrontation. It meant seeing who he really was, without the version she had built in her mind. I'm scared, she admitted, of what I asked, that I'll find out I was wrong about everything she said. I leaned forward slightly. You already did, I said softly. She let out a small, broken laugh. Yeah, I guess I did, but then her expression shifted. And I'm scared that if I walk away, I'll have nothing left. That I understood. More than she realized, because losing something you believed in, even when it was wrong, still felt like loss. You won't have nothing, I said. She looked at me. You'll have clarity, I continued, and that's more valuable than anything built on something false. She didn't respond right away, but I could see her thinking, really thinking, not avoiding, not denying, facing it. I want to fix things with you, she said suddenly. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I know I can't make it right overnight. I know I don't deserve that, but I want to try. I sat back studying her. Because this was the moment, not the confrontation, not the truth being revealed, but this, the part where someone asks for another chance, and you have to decide if you're willing to give it. Trying means more than saying it, I said. I know, she replied quickly. It means showing it. It means earning it back. I nodded slowly. Yes. She held my gaze. I'm willing to do that, she said, and I believed her, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. There was no defensiveness, no excuses, no attempt to soften what she had done, just truth and effort. That doesn't mean things go back to how they were, I told her. I understand, she said. It means we rebuild, I continued, slowly, carefully. She nodded again. I can do that. I paused for a moment. Then I added, and it means boundaries. That word landed differently. I could see it, because boundaries weren't something we had ever really talked about before. Not in this family. Not in this way. What kind of boundaries? She asked. The kind that protect both of us, I said. So this never happens again. She took a breath, then nodded. Okay. No argument, no hesitation, just acceptance. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because growth, real growth, always comes with discomfort. And she wasn't running from it. We sat there a little longer, not talking, just existing in the same space again. Not as we were before, but as something new, something uncertain, something fragile, but real. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not relief, not happiness, but peace. A quiet, steady kind of peace. Because the truth was no longer hidden. And whatever came next, at least it would be built on something real. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't arrive like some grand moment where everything suddenly feels right again. It happens quietly, in small choices, in conversations that are uncomfortable but honest, in boundaries that feel unfamiliar but necessary. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were no dramatic reunions, no instant forgiveness, no illusion that everything had been fixed. Instead, there was distance. Careful, measured distance. Emily moved out of the house she shared with Jason 2 weeks after that conversation. She didn't tell anyone right away, not even me. I found out when she showed up at my door one evening, her car packed with a few bags, her eyes tired but steady. "I'm not ready to talk about everything yet," she said, but I couldn't stay there. I stepped aside. "Come in." That time, it wasn't hesitation. It was understanding. She didn't stay long, just enough to rest, just enough to breathe. Because this time, she wasn't running toward me. She was learning how to stand on her own. And I respected that. We started slowly. A phone call here, a short visit there, conversations that didn't try to fix everything, but didn't avoid it either. I keep thinking about that night she admitted once sitting across from me with a cup of coffee in her hands. The recording, the things I said, the way I looked at you. I didn't interrupt. "I don't recognize that version of myself," she continued, "and that scares me." "It should," I said gently. She nodded. "I trusted the wrong person," she said, "but I also stopped trusting the right one." That mattered, that awareness, because healing isn't just about regret. It's about understanding what led you there. Michael came by more often, not in a forced way, not trying to overcompensate, just present. We talked, sometimes about what happened, sometimes about nothing at all. And in those quiet, ordinary moments, I could feel something returning, not the same as before, but real. Linda called every week. At first it was awkward, careful, like we were both afraid of saying the wrong thing. But over time, the conversations became easier, not because we forgot what happened, but because we stopped pretending it hadn't mattered. "I should have trusted you," she said once. "I should have asked you." I took a breath. "You will next time," I replied. And that was enough, because trust, real trust, isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do after you make them. As for Jason, he tried to reach out. Once, then twice, then not at all. Emily told me about it. He says I misunderstood everything she said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. "And what do you think?" She didn't hesitate. "I think I finally understood everything." That was the difference. Not anger, not bitterness, clarity. She filed for separation a month later. Not because I told her to, not because anyone pressured her, but because she saw the truth for what it was, and she chose herself. For the first time in a long time, our relationship, mine and hers, didn't go back to what it used to be, and I stopped expecting it to. Because the truth is, what we had before wasn't as strong as I thought it was. It had cracks, blind trust, unspoken expectations, a lack of boundaries. This, what we were building now, it was different, stronger in some ways, more honest, more aware, more real. One afternoon, we were sitting in the backyard. No big conversation, no heavy topic, just sunlight, a quiet breeze, and 2 cups of coffee. I used to think family meant unconditional everything, Emily said suddenly. I glanced at her, and now, she smiled faintly. Now I think it means choosing each other, but not at the cost of losing yourself. I nodded slowly. That's a better definition. She looked at me then. Did you ever think about cutting me off? She asked. The question wasn't defensive, it was honest, and it deserved the same in return. Yes, I said. She didn't flinch. I thought about it more than once. She nodded, absorbing that. But you didn't, she said. No, I replied. Why? I took a breath. Because I needed to know if you were still capable of seeing the truth, I said. And when you did, I needed to see what you would do with it. She looked down at her hands. And if I hadn't, then things would be very different right now, I said. She nodded again. Understanding, not fear, not guilt, just understanding. I'm glad I did, she said softly. So am I. We sat in silence for a moment. But it wasn't empty. It was full of something we hadn't had in a long time. Respect, not blind, not assumed, earned, carefully, slowly, honestly, and that made all the difference. Because in the end, this wasn't just about lies, or betrayal, or even truth. It was about what happens when everything falls apart, and you have to decide what's worth rebuilding. I lost something through all of this, something I'll never fully get back. The version of my family that felt unquestionable. But what I gained was something I trust far more. Clarity, boundaries, and relationships built on truth, not assumption. And that is something no one can take from me again. And when it does, it forces us to face something deeper than the situation itself. It asks us who we are when everything we believed is challenged. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how easily trust can be shaken when doubt is planted in the right place. Sometimes the people we love don't turn against us because they want to hurt us. They do it because they are confused, influenced, or afraid. But that doesn't make the damage any less real. And that's an important truth. Love does not excuse harm. Family does not justify betrayal. And forgiveness does not mean pretending it never happened. What matters most is what comes after. Do people take responsibility? Do they face the truth even when it's uncomfortable? Do they choose to grow instead of defend? Because healing isn't about going back to how things were. It's about building something better, something stronger, something honest. And sometimes that means setting boundaries with the very people you once trusted without question. If you've ever been misunderstood, falsely judged, or hurt by someone close to you, I want you to know this. You are allowed to stand in your truth. You are allowed to protect your peace. And you are allowed to choose who stays in your life based on respect, not just history. If this story resonated with you, I'd really like to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love? Or did you choose to walk away? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone, And if you believe stories like this matter, don't forget to like and subscribe, because sometimes hearing someone else's truth helps us find our own.